Okay, well, we want to welcome you guys to Lessons in Leadership. We keep saying that our topic right now, which is how to build your leadership brand, is something that continues on like the song that never ends because we have so much content. Thanks to H, he's been bringing us content that he's been developing over the last 10, 12 years. So we're going to do a quick review, and then we'd love for you guys to add questions and thoughts in the comments. We know several of you are joining us today. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Dana Williams, and I have Dana Williams Consulting, and I really get excited about helping leaders and individuals unlock their unique talents and live in their strengths every day. And so I've established and created the only strengths journal, which is now on Amazon, called the Strengths Journal.
Yay!
Yay! We got to celebrate this morning. So I'm very excited about that, and appreciate
as you should be. That's really cool.
So fun. So I'm going to kick it off to Micah to introduce himself, and then we'll have H introduce yourself. So
thank you. My name is Micah Lawrence. I'm an ICF certified coach and a Gallup certified strengths coach. I do a lot of work with startup founders and their teams, but I just love helping leaders tap into their potential and help build high performing teams.
Okay.
Yeah, H.
I'm H. Muir. I've been on my own for 10 plus years next month.
Wow.
Probably 10 awesome. Plus, because we've known you since it was 10.
Yeah. It might be 11. I need to go back and do the math.
That's true. It's got to be coming up on 11.
Yeah.
So
it's easy to just say, though. I've been doing this for over a decade. Yeah. 10 is a good milestone.
It's a round
number.
My business is called Lift Shop. Give your brand a lift, give your team a lift, give your organization a lift. And we'll talk about what LIFT stands for today when we're delving into our leadership brand.
Yeah, we like to tease H because he puts acronyms on everything. So y'all just hang tight for what LIFT stands for. It's really exciting.
We tease because we're jealous.
Yes.
It comes so easily to him.
When you go by a letter,
everything's a letter.
Yeah, when you go by a letter, everything's a letter.
It's just easy, right? Because I'm a third, right? When you're the third and you get the short acronym for a name or one letter, I didn't even get an acronym. I got a letter. So
I love it.
Well, and before we forget too, for anybody who's listening, we're always keeping our eyes on the comments, and we love it when people will ask questions or leave comments, your own thoughts about what we're talking about. So please dive into the comments, say hello if you want real quick, and then drop a comment or question throughout our time today.
So here's the question. Can you see my screen?
Yes. It's a leadership brand right now.
All right. So if I go big screen, if I go full, can you still see it?
We don't see it now.
No. See, that's so weird.
It never works.
I know.
Nope, just make that bad boy as big as possible in presentation.
We're good.
That's what I'm trying.
We'll just keep it there.
All right. So just to refresh the audience where we've been, it's kind of like you think about the 4 P's of your leadership brands, which is a take on the 4 P's of marketing. And we initially talked about your power source, right? What are your strengths? What are your values? And what are your personality? And that leads to what's your purpose? Who are you as a leader and what do you bring? And then we've been talking about your point of view and your pitch. So in the point of view, we talked about, what are those 4 or 5 questions that you want to answer, especially if you're new as a leader? Who are you? What do you expect? What they can expect from you? What's important to you? So we talked about that the last 2 times. And then we were talking about our pitch, and really, which is the articulation of your brand, right? What do you want the audience, our target audience, to know about you as a leader? By the way, can you all see it's a yes. 4 P's of leadership brand.
Good.
Yay. So we're going to continue that conversation. We may also get into, sorry, I'm backing up. Hopefully we'll get into platform today, which is the last P, right? How do you launch your brand and what does that look like? But just to refresh folks, when it comes to your point of view and your pitch, it's a personal statement, right? When that kind of triggers, it's not necessarily a tagline, but it does trigger your point of view, your pitch when you're confronted with an opportunity, particularly with your target audience. So I know Micah just had a great opportunity with his target audience, and he may talk.
Yeah.
But one of the things that, how do you know you have a good pitch and what constitutes a good pitch? And I just want to talk about this real briefly, and then I'm going to show you some examples, and we can dissect the examples or talk about whether or not they meet the ABCs. But a pitch should be authentic, right? And I think the word authentic gets overused a ton. But in this
Yeah.
case, to me, and maybe alignment is a better one because it is a better A. Ooh, I think I'm ideating already.
Yep.
So to be authentic, it should align with your purpose and reflect your power, right? I think that because if it reflects your power, right? If it aligns with your strengths, it's going to be energy building. And frankly, that's a real sign that you're being authentic is when you're energized. And that doesn't mean that you're an extrovert and like me, and you're talking with your hands all over the place and really excited. It's just that there is a positive energy when you're playing to your strengths. So when we say authentic,
Well, it's like when you, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just done. Go ahead, Micah.
No, I was just thinking about times where you could be talking to somebody who just seems like they're keeping it close to the vest, and they're being professional, and then all of a sudden you trigger a topic that's totally unrelated, and it's like space or like astronomy or some random topic, and you see their eyes light up and get energized by a topic. It's like that's their authentic self. That's when you really see what's important to people and what they care about. That's the fun part.
Absolutely. And I think that I know we're the word authentic, H, you've kind of been back and forth on that one, saying, oh man, I don't like that word. But so I'm curious where you're landing now. Are you still on authentic, or are you thinking?
I'm on authentic when you're talking about something concrete, like your pitch, as opposed to being your authentic self. Like I just have people talk when I do brand, your personal brand or your leadership brand, and they say, well, I'm authentic. I'm like, well,
what does that mean?
And to me, it's kind of like it's the when you talk about yourself and you say you're authentic, I use the opposite rule, as opposed to the person who would say, I'm not authentic. No one would ever say that. So when you're saying
Nobody
authentic,
says that.
you're not saying anything specific that really defines who you are as a leader, because no one would say the opposite, right? So have something more to say. Now, I think your pitch, because it does align with your purpose and reflects your power, is much more specific, and that's what makes it authentic.
I think that's a great distinction. And I think to your point, Micah, too, I think you can feel in the room when somebody is authentic and when they're not. And I think one of the biggest challenges today for leaders and individuals, especially when I talk to other women business leaders, is confidence. And knowing these and knowing what they're confident, knowing what they're good at, and being able just to speak that, then it does come off as authentic instead of something they're not. So I appreciate that distinction.
Well, and I would build on that, Dana, and say, you know what the number one driver of confidence is? Playing to your strengths.
Yes. Yeah, good point.
Being authentic, right? The other one is be brief. And I think elevator ride 60 seconds, I would say 30. And it's probably less than that, especially if your target audience is younger, which is most of the workforce. 70% of the workforce is going to be under, millennial and Gen Z, right? Or centennials. Right. Their attention, it's even less than that. I would say it's 20, because it used to be a 30-second spot, right? Commercials. And now you're seeing most commercials are 15 to 20 seconds. And that's because our attention spans have just gotten less. So be brief. I like capture their attention, right? What is it about your pitch that plays to your audience wants and needs? And I think that, I may put Mike on the spot here and talk about, the conference you were at, Micah. What I would be curious how, when you had that audience, that's your target audience.
Yeah.
What did you say or do to capture their attention?
I was just smiling thinking back on this because I had a chance to practice a pitch over and over and over again, and I remember a couple of times thinking, I could capture them better. I didn't use the word capture when I was reflecting on it, but I think I could have done a better job of capturing them. But I did have like the brief part ring true because I was at a 3-day retreat for startup founders, and I presented to a small group of those. But the rest of the 3 days, I had interactions with at least 5 or 6 of them. There were 65 people there, And so I would have a good conversation with 5 or 6 people every day. And oftentimes they would ask, well, what do you do? I would give them a 10-second version where it was, I do leadership coaching with founders and team development workshops. And my specialty is the Clifton Strengths Assessment. Have you heard of that before? So it was that was my 10 to 15 seconds. The question at the end, have you heard of that before, was a way to kind of introduce us into a more detailed conversation about what I do. But it wasn't as much the connect to your target. I think you haven't gotten there yet, but I think there definitely could have been a way that my pitch might have included them in it more than just what I do. And my question could have been better, that rather than have you heard of the Clifton Strengths Assessment, ask them something that's a little bit more relevant to them. Over the course of the conversation, we always got to that. I mean, as a coach, it was always my intention to not talk about what I do, but to lead with what is important to them and what their challenges are, so that many times we would slip into an organic coaching conversation where they would start spilling their life and their challenges and their dreams to me, and we could dig into some of those things that I wanted, my pitch to include. But I think I could have been more strategic about how I pitched, knowing I was going into this situation with tons of my target audience.
We have a great comment on the comments. He said, I understand to keep it brief, but will it be called an elevator pitch or a quick pitch? I like what Micah did in 10 seconds. So that's a good comment.
Well,
I will say most of the people there were 35 or under. So like H said about the young audience, 10 to 15 seconds felt about right.
Yep. Well, and I think it's this balance, right? Capture their attention. So, Micah, when you were with those founders, saying, that you're a leadership coach for founders, that kind of captures their attention, right? Oh, you work with people like me. And then I think that the connecting to your target, to me, that's the the best way that I would say to connect to your target, what are the questions that you're going to ask, right? Because that show that you have an interest and a curiosity of your audience. And I think that's that to me is the next step is, hey, I've just talked about myself for 10 to 30 seconds. Tell me about you.
I did just think of one quick thing I was saying that I didn't remember doing until you mentioned this, H, is that almost every time, and this was true, there were about 4 of the founders of the 60 there that I have worked with one-on-one. So I knew a handful of the people, and I would often slip that in there. I do leadership coaching with founders, and I've worked with a handful of the founders here. I put that out there so that it would kind of put this question in their mind. Well, why haven't you worked with me? And that was one way to kind of capture their attention. Like, oh, you have? I wonder who those people are. So I didn't even realize I had been doing that, but that might have accomplished the capture a little bit better.
Yeah, I think starting with a problem is, how most founders have struggled with how to grow their businesses. Well, what I do is help come alongside the founder and help them know and unlock their strengths so they can be their best or something. And then, so you're giving them that so that they can grow. And it's kind of starting with that problem solution. Because remember, people aren't buying you, they're buying the solution.
That's right.
And so I love how you connected with them automatically there. And once people hear their name in the room or hear their voice in the room, they feel engaged. And so being able to get them to your point, H, connect by asking questions and getting them to connect back with you. I love that. And
one of the best ways, so think of connection this way as well. Connection is more than likely going to be your first impression. And so when you talk first impressions, it's warmth, then credibility, right? Warmth is, can I trust you? And one of the best ways to generate warmth, besides a smile, is to show interest and be curious about others. That shows warmth, that you care about them. And Micah, to your point, right? Saying that you had worked with 4 of those founders before, that's your cred, right? That's your credibility.
Yeah.
It's a watch out for me. I can be a big time name dropper, right? Like I was doing trainings like, when the president and when John and I worked together 25, and it's because it is one where I want to build the credibility, but you have to watch that the credibility and the name dropping trumps the warmth. You've always got to
Yeah,
lead with warmth. Yeah.
that's a good point. And I think Dana, so I like Dana's point that if you really know your audience, and that this could be like I'm talking to founders, but for leaders, it might be their employees. It's the new team that they just joined. If you truly know their problem and can articulate it back to them, that shows credibility. That it's like, even just with these founders, there were a few times where I would make a comment like, oh, I know what's, because I could hear what stage they're in, and how big their team is. I was like, oh, your role is about to change. Your role at the beginning of your startup is different than the role is going to be for the next 35 employees that you hire. And to be able to say something like that with confidence, like, this guy knows me, this guy knows people like me, and it built credibility while also some empathy. Oh, I know what you're going through.
I love that.
So let's look at some examples. I'll show you
Yeah.
a couple of these are real life leaders that did these. And it's interesting, the first one, I'm a leader that generates growth for my team and our business because I excel at forming strategies and making them happen. It's hard to judge whether or not it's authentic. And again, I think it's this is their shorthand. I would, if my feedback to them was this could be anybody, or it could be a lot of people, generate growth for my team and our business. And I want to, I also it doesn't engender warmth for me.
Right.
So that was one of I like that, I excel at forming strategies and making them happen. But as a leader, right, my push to this person was, where does it show that you make them happen through others and not just do it yourself? So,
yeah. One thing that this reminds me of is, and I know we've got a comment here, I'm actually curious to hear what y'all think about it, but I read these words and I'm reminded of times, and H, I know you've experienced this too, facilitating workshops with teams, and you just made a comment like this. When I've worked with leaders in the past on strategic planning type things, the way that H said, nobody would ever say I'm not authentic. Everybody's going to say I'm authentic, and if everybody's going to say it, it's not useful. And I remember having those conversations with a lot of leaders in the corporate world, where if we're building a plan or writing goals or writing a vision, or even, writing my pitch, if I'm using corporate speak or, buzzwords and formal words, I think sometimes it leaves out some of the authenticity. So I would even I always write like this, the way that you have what you have on the screen right here. That is how I write. But people have told me repeatedly, can you make it more human? Tell me in simpler, more informal words what it is that you offer. And that just crossed my mind here. I don't know if you've experienced that. H, is this a good starting point?
Is that one that I just read, that first one, is a woman who went on to start her own business and is doing really well. Which nice. Then I would almost say is, I'm a leader that, generates growth through my entrepreneurial spirit, probably would have been a greater way to capture that for her. Yeah. But sometimes you got to live the brand and come back to it. It's an iterative process. So yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
It looks like we have a great question. How about a lead introduction to a webinar, to a seminar or webinar? I think you need to be short and not talk on and on, right? And
assuming this is the pitch for the webinar, not the beginning of the webinar, right?
That's what it sounds like.
I could show you, I think at the beginning, hold on. Remember, I'm on slide 76.
And I think while you're doing that, I would just say,
I don't have
remember that when you're talking, we don't want to talk about ourselves too much. We want the audience to be our hero, and we want to be the guide and the person coming along in the story, helping them. So I would always look at what I'm saying based on that filter, and not about, I'm here to save the world. But, talk about the problem and how you solve it and how you help. So what do you find, H?
I didn't find my slide in this deck, but I always talk about, I do just what I said in my intro, right? The name of my business is Lift Shop. I do that spiel, right? And then I have a slide with my picture on it. And I also say I'm from Kansas City and I like to travel. I have one daughter. And then I say, let me explain what H is. I talk about H is my first initial. It's what everybody calls me.
Yeah.
And then I put up a picture of Homer Simpson and I say, the H stands for Homer, which when you're a guy who loves beer, you're a bald guy and you love beer.
Yeah. Donuts. Beer and donuts.
H spares me the Simpson jokes. So it's a little self-deprecating and hopefully humorous.
People love that. Yeah.
But people will remember that. Remember, you've
Yeah.
given them a visual. You brought them into the story, and
Yep.
you've kind of broken through the blah of I'm
quick.
Joe Speaker, and I've been in business.
Who
for
goes
25
by a
years.
letter, but I don't
Yeah.
take myself that seriously. I didn't have anything to do with it. So yeah.
Right.
Well, and this, yeah, I loved just something that you said. H reminded me, and thinking about this question, that we all start this. I don't know who this comment came from or if they've been here before, but if you've been here before, you'll notice that all three of us pretty much say the same thing every time we introduce ourselves. It's something that I imagine the two of you are the same, but I wrote it down once and I edited it to be exactly what I wanted it to sound like. And I'll probably tweak it over time. I actually have tweaked it even since we started doing our LinkedIn lives, but I wrote it down the one time so that I didn't have to invent it every time. And then that became my quick pitch for who I am and what I have to offer. So to answer your question, I do think that it needs to be short and not talk on and on. And that even if you go through the process of writing it down exactly the way you want it to sound once, it's not authentic to read it off every time. But if you can be really succinct and clear about what your value proposition is in a 10-second pitch, that can be a really powerful asset for you.
Well, I would say early on, be formal about it, to your point, Mike, and write it down. The other thing is it goes back to trust, right? And I don't care if it's about your leadership brand or some of the brands that I work with that are trying to engage their target consumer or audience. Trust is about a relationship. Trust is about consistency over time. So we all say the same thing.
That's right.
Not just because it's efficient, but because we're built. People in the audience who hear us every time go, "Yeah, that's who they are."
Yeah.
Yep.
So H, you can't see this because you're presenting, but they made one more comment and said, "Oh, so H is an actual brand. Good for you. It's great."
It has turned into my brand. I would say
you made it a brand.
I didn't. Yeah,
I love it. Why do I feel like we're not going to get to platform today?
We're not.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I got a couple more of these, and then we'll do more on platform next time because I think there's
it's fine.
Well, pitch is important because I think we can't just rush through it. We did a little bit last week, but there's so much involved in it that I think spending the time today is important.
Well, I'm going to show you my whole
funny.
brand here.
Let's see your lift. Do you have lift? Is that what you're going to show us?
I do. The second one is a good friend of mine who's he does sales training for a major, like a Fortune 500. And he's what I like about this, which to me is the capture and the connection, is he doesn't just say I develop people. He said I develop salespeople.
Love it.
And I think right away that that's really specific, and he's honed in on. I develop salespeople. Which kind of salespeople? The ones who want to grow and evolve, right? I think one of the hardest things. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, one of the hardest things, right, is in brand positioning, we would call this your benefit followed by your reason to believe, right? So the benefit is I develop sales. That's your target. I develop salespeople who want and need to grow and develop, right? That's the target, and that's their need or want. Because I think can be really hard for a lot of us to talk about. Why should you believe my brand? What is the evidence I have, right? And so I think that while we don't want to talk about ourselves, you kind of need to have that, whether it's in your back pocket or not. What is the reason to believe that you are the brand that you pitch?
I love that.
Mean? Yeah.
I was just going to say this second one definitely strikes me as less generic. This is not what you're going to hear from every leader. This is a very specific leader that knows their brand.
Yep. That's my buddy Hugh. All right, this is my whole, like, if you take my brand, at its simplest, it's anchored in my strengths and my values. And then I I in terms of what my power is, that my strengths and my values ladder up to, it that's a lift. So learning, insight, facilitation and fun, true teammate. And I've changed that. I used to say trust, but trust is overused. And I like to think of when I'm with my clients, I'm not, I don't like saying the consultant word. I'm your teammate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's where it leads to my pitch. If I break my pitch down, it's really, my pitch is part of my purpose, right? I lift brands, teams, and organizations through leadership, ideas, facilitation, and training. That's what I say every time we kick this off. That's my pitch. My shorthand for it, that's kind of a wink and a nod, is I'm your wingman for learning.
Mhm.
That's
Nice.
I love that. I
as a
haven't ever heard
single
you say
guy.
that. Yeah.
I've been a
Wingman is
wingman my whole life.
all too appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, this has nothing to do with Top Gun and Maverick.
Are you
But
sure?
Yeah,
I
you
know
had this long
my
before.
brand. Dana, I've been around so long, my brand's become relevant again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and Maverick stayed right there together,
Yeah.
right? From
Yeah.
way back when till now.
Oh my God.
But
So-
that's true. It's classic. It's stayed, right? You haven't changed it, which I think is very powerful.
Like I said, I tweak it, right? Like I think true
Mhm.
teammate, because I found that just, I tried using trust and and I'm like, that's not, I'm a good teammate. That's what I like to do. I want to work with
Mhm.
you side by side.
Yeah.
It shows self-awareness too. I think I've had some conversations about this with some of the founders at the retreat, just knowing yourself well enough to know what energizes you, what fulfills you, what your purpose is, and not compare yourself to other people is a really hard thing, especially in a group of founders where you see somebody across the room who's on their second or third startup and you're on your first and it's just way behind, and you kind of feel like, well, do I need to model after these other people that I admire that are further along than me, or do I find my own way? And I just love that yours is a reflection of who you are, and you know that, and you've leaned into that rather than questioning, do I need to do what other people are doing? It's like, no, find your value proposition and be that.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's how many thousands of coaches out there, right? And everybody is
Oh,
unique,
yeah.
different. And to break through all that, if you're a coach watching this right now, you're probably wondering, how do I break through with my message? And I think it's this formula is great, H, that you've put together. Did you
Yeah,
have
and this
one?
and again, people like, I just wanted to show this one because it's a little different format, right? But their point of view, which is, and then their pitch is that shorthand, right? A persistent problem solver who knows how to get it done. And it's what works for you. I think what I look at when I coach people on these is, does this ladder, right? So if the pitch is you want to be known as a persistent problem solver who knows how to get things done, and this does that ladder to your point of view. So one of the things I told this person was, I would flip your point of view and your strengths so that there's your strengths are kind of your core, and then they hear your point of view, and then the capsulation of that 10-second is your pitch.
Yeah.
I also think that if you one of the things is being the specificity, right? And what can make you specific, which makes you also more authentic. Can you be specific about what you do? If, like, for mine, what I do is really broad, but like for Micah, who he targets is narrow. That makes it more specific. That makes it much more authentic. And that's for me too. I work with, I facilitate, that's narrow, and I facilitate leaders who want to learn. That's also that narrow. While leaders is really broad, the caveat, the point of narrowing it is, I want leaders who want to learn. So those are a couple things about pitches. I know we're
think
at
that's
time.
great.
Love it.
You know, it would be so much fun. And I've done this before with websites, but where you actually have people pop on their statement and we can critique it and give them feedback. That
Yeah.
is really fun to do. I don't know if people would be interested in that. If y'all are, I mean, it would be fun because just I think that's what I found in my groups I work with is they just need that person to look at it and tell them, yeah, this is great, but
You need a sounding board.
yeah, absolutely. So it'd be kind of fun to do that.
I have seen lots of leadership brands and Dana and I have worked on brands, so love giving brand feedback. We could do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we, as usual, we finished up, didn't get to the next section, but that means
But we
this
finished on time. That's
we
good.
finished on time, right? So please follow us here on LinkedIn. Follow H and Micah and myself. We all have amazing insights to share of what we've learned, and we want to help you. And we're so glad you're here. We'll be here in 2 weeks again with you at noon Central. So join us again. At that point, we'll be talking about platforms. So how do you
promote your brand, right? How do you
yeah,
ensure that the experience of your target is the experience you want them to have?
Absolutely. I'm excited about that one too. That'll be great.
Yeah,
So
be
send us
fun.
your questions, stay engaged with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys in about 2 weeks. Thank you,
and
guys.
bring your pitch next time.
Bring your
If
pitch
you
and
Yeah,
we'll
bring
don't
your
do
pitch
send
if
it,
you want to.
if
Wouldn't
you
that
don't
be
send
fun?
it to H or Dana between now and then, bring it with you.
Yeah.
Do it.
I'd love
Awesome.
to see it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
everybody.